help when you need it. That's where 211 comes into play.
Tonight, our conversation with the Help Network's chief executive continues, focusing on its response during the East Palestine train derailment. Here's WKBN Community Affairs Director Dee Crawford.
Thank you for joining me and continuing my conversation with Vince. Vince, what role did 211 play in the most recent disaster?
Yeah, I was sharing with someone earlier how we received a call on Saturday morning from the Columbiana EMA asking for assistance and hopefully diverting some of those 911 calls that were not technically an emergency call, but just needed resources or information to 211. So we started taking those calls beginning on Sunday, and between Sunday and Thursday of that week, we received over 950 calls from people who were looking for support in regards to, there was a radius of how far the evacuation was, how far that was, where people can stay who were evacuated, what was available out there in regards to other resources. And some people were just calling because they were frightened by this and just needed somebody to talk to.
This is a major role for you and your staff. Do you have training specifically that's designated to them to address? We used to do mock disasters, and there's never a complete manual and book. But how do you address that with your staff?
Our crisis hotline staff have extensive training on how to deal with these types of things. People who are in crisis, people who are struggling with life issues, someone who's just in need of support and help. And our staff are trained on how to be empathetic, how to listen, but then they have access to an extensive resource directory with all types of support and resources in our communities.
So the community really can understanding this is that the staff is trained regardless, quote unquote, of the disaster. The needs are similar, same, and that the staff's approach to resolving those or something that they're readily trained to address?
I think what's important is that our staff are trained to listen. When somebody is struggling, when somebody's in crisis, when somebody's hurting, they need a listening ear. And so our staff listen, and then what they do is respond in a way that's empathetic, in a way that is giving them some relief and or resources available so that they can access those things to help themselves.
Unmet needs. Did you find an area where you were unable to provide the response, and as a community as a whole, as it's evaluating this whole process, looking at what went unmet, how it could be addressed in the future?
I think that's something that we keep track of, throughout the month and throughout the year. If you ask me today, probably housing's the biggest one, and we definitely have a affordable housing crisis in our communities, and so this is something that we are working with people who are, on the other side of that phone, and or people who come to our agency looking for that type of support.
Thank you for joining me. Conversation will continue regarding 988. Thank you again. I'm Dee Crawford, Community Affairs Director, WKBN.
Hi everyone, I'm Lindsay Watson. Thanks for watching the WKBN 27 First News YouTube channel. If you want more video news, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the WKBN 27 First News app for breaking news alerts.